we're getting ready to go here. Things are all starting up. You got some idea what's going on. I know you can't see me. Give me a minute. We'll make it work. We always make it work. That's right. Look at all this. Hey everybody. It is time for Otaku no Cooking. Well, Workshop Wednesday technically. But we got a new setup here today for some kitchen stuff. Thought I would try doing some baking because this month on the Discord we have a monthly hobby at in our Hobby Hopper channel. I can't speak tonight apparently. Yes, every month we're trying a new hobby, and this month is Japanese cooking. So today I'm going through the manga cookbook, and we're gonna go in and we're gonna make some tamagoyaki, which are these sort of egg rolls, if you will, although not an egg roll in a Chinese cooking sense. It is a cylinder of cooked egg, and we're going to try making them and see how it works. Don't know, never done it before. We're going to try this out, see what happens. So let's switch over. So I've got, let's see, so the recipe calls for 3 eggs, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to just crack some eggs here. And toss those. There we go. These are from a local farmer's market. So they're a little uneven in size. That's okay. It'll all even out. So to that we're going to add again 2 teaspoons of sugar. Let me grab some sugar and 2 teaspoons. I always like to, make these the way I would actually make them at home, because this is actually my home. So, we need 2 teaspoons of sugar each. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which should be there. Yeah, and I mean 1/4 teaspoon means a really small amount basically. So we're just gonna throw some in there. And we're gonna mix those up. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and start heating up the pan. They say to put a tablespoon of vegetable oil on medium heat. I'm actually not gonna measure that. Oops, something fell over there. Because I'm fairly familiar with what a tablespoon's worth would be. I'm gonna go there. Maybe a bit too much, a bit too little, but that should get us started. So I'm just bringing that up to heat. And then they said to add a little milk if we like our eggs fluffy, which I do. They recommend 2 teaspoons of milk to this. Again, optional, but I am a fluffy egg kind of a person. And add just a little milk there. There we go. Put that back in. Then we're going to mix that up. And so we're just mixing this up into a mixed mix. That is the idea here. Now it does not say how thoroughly to mix it. Mix the eggs in a large cup, add milk, then add the egg mixture. So I'm assuming we want this to be fairly uniform, but not necessarily, thoroughly blended. So I'm just going to keep on stirring this until I get something that looks uniform. Yeah, so there's a little bit of color variation there. And I'll mix it again a little bit once once this goes into the pan. But in the meantime, as I am wont to do, I'm going to go ahead and clean out my dishes, because if I do that now, then it's done. There's the quarter teaspoon. We can clean that out. There we go. So that's taken care of. And I'll also take this opportunity to just put some things away that I don't think I'll need any more of. So I have been to Japan. I have not actually had tamagoyaki before. And I'm just putting my hand over the pan to get a sense of how hot it is. Now I'm just going to move that oil back and forth to coat the bottom of the pan. Not much use putting this into a pan that is that has all the oil just on one side. That's feeling pretty hot. Again, this is medium heat, so about half on the dial. And in this, they're actually using chopsticks, large chopsticks, to mix this with. So I'm going to give that a try. I actually do have these large cooking chopsticks that I use for cooking now and again. Actually, it's been a while. I'm going to clean those off as well. They've been in the drawer for a little bit. I actually have a couple of different sets, so these may be some of the rarely used ones. I'll dry those off. We want them dry because we're going to put those in that pan that has the oil in it and the eggs, and if we add moisture to it, that can just affect what we have. It will change the moisture content. I mean, by a very, very tiny amount, but something we want to avoid as much as possible. Now, another thing they say here is that once we have this done, we're going to actually put this on a piece of aluminum foil and roll it up in that. So I'm just going to go ahead and right now grab a piece of aluminum foil and put it out here. Hope it won't be too shiny on the camera. I think we're okay. So once we're cooked, we're going to put this back on this aluminum foil and cook it on here. Or not cook it on here, but roll it up on here. So this is pretty warm. That's hot. I would call that hot. We're going to stir that up again, just because it's probably settled somewhat in the last minute or two. Yeah, I'm fairly confident that may not be fully to temperature, but it's enough. So all we're going to do here is put this on here for, they say, yeah, we're going to cook this for about 3 minutes on this pan, so they claim. We're going to see how that goes. Good. You hear that sizzle, it means it's nice and hot. I'm actually going to lower the temperature a little bit. I don't want this to cook too much. And then I'm just going to move this occasionally. And you can see how I'm just moving these eggs just so they don't stick. So they don't stick to the bottom of that pan. And I'm not making an omelet here, so I'm not worried about breaking up these eggs a little bit. I'm just moving this around. And actually this is cooking pretty quickly. I mean, this is... I don't know what kind of range they have, but this is already pretty firm. So I'm going to move this off already, like right now. Man, that was quick. Okay, and we will turn off the heat. So now what I want to do, again, this may not work. I may have to make this multiple times. I'm going to spread this out fairly evenly. And then we're going to roll this into a roll. So, whoops, there we go. So again, I'm just going to take this, actually going to fold it back a little bit. And then I'm going to roll this like this. Oh, maybe. Do that, and then I'll try to roll it over like this, maybe. And try to get that nice and cylindrical. and I'm gonna seal it off. The thing is, this is still hot, so it's still cooking. Like, it's still very, very hot. So that is cooking right now. And so the egg should be closed in tightly. And I'm hoping this is tight enough that it will actually solidify into a roll of stuff, a roll of eggs. And they claim, wait about 5 minutes for the egg to solidify. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to set this for, I'll set this for 4, because we've been sitting here for a few moments. And we're going to try it. We're going to see how it turns out. I'm actually tempted to do another set of eggs. Now that that's cooled down a little bit, I might be able to clean out, and it's going to need some cleaning. I can clean out a bunch of the egg. Not all of it, but a good chunk. Okay. So if I were to use this pan again, that's fine. So as you can see, I've got still some, some detritus on there, but I could cook on that, and that's not going to be a big deal. I wouldn't want to do it over and over, because eventually that stuff will burn and then get into things, but I'm confident that like one more cook rather, should be fine on this. But that's okay. We're just going to stick with this as it is for now. So again, we're just going to wait a few moments. Hopefully this is going to firm up. And once it does, we will cut into this, and hopefully we will have a firm cylinder of eggs. And if not, we're going to try it again and iterate until we figure out what's going to go on. This is what's called tamagoyaki. It is from, actually you can't see that very well. There we go. Tamagoyaki, Japanese style omelette, if you will, from the manga cookbook. You can see here, which is a fun little book. A bunch of different traditional Japanese recipes, very much simplified. And I don't mean simplified in a negative way. I mean that, they are Japanese recipes, they're just not hugely complicated. And a whole bunch of different traditional Japanese foods there that you can get. And so what I like is, yes, there are manga characters, doing it, and it can be a little goofy at times, but it is also full-scale recipes, and by having the illustrations, you get a better idea of how everything comes together. Exactly how to do all the different steps. So it's actually a good fit for a cookbook, which is why I like it so much. And you get this on Amazon and all the typical places. So about a minute and a half to go on this. I'm just going to test it here. Still feels pretty loose. Let me check the recipe, the recipe again. So it says, after about 3 minutes, while the eggs are still runny, carefully pour them onto a large sheet of aluminum foil. Use the foil to roll the eggs into a cylindrical shape. Once you have a good shape, roll the edges of the foil to close the eggs in tightly. Wait about 5 minutes for the eggs to solidify. Then remove the roll from the foil and slice into bite-sized pieces. So we'll see. I am a little worried. It says I should stir it to cooks in chunks, not in little bits. So I did not want a really thin set of things there. In other words, you can stir, and you get it, sort of fine. But this was in chunks, so this is what I have so far. Looks like a hot dog, a very big hot dog, maybe more like sausage. And so we're going to see what this turns into in about a minute. I'm definitely quite curious, but meanwhile, let me do a bit of cleaning. In fact, I might as well clean out my my bowl and fork, because even if I make this again, it'll be nice to have a clean set of implements. That way I'm not worried about, well, is there a little bit of the last one and this one, is something changed, right? It's not a big deal, but it's nice to have that taken care of as much as possible. Ideally, I do that in the pan, but cleaning a pan takes a little longer than that. It's a little more involved, and then I always like to dry off. There's a little bit of did not clean that particularly well. There's still a little bit of egg on that. Huh, okay. Not a bad thing for here, obviously, but I will keep an eye on that and then clean that off. Okay. Now we will dry out that bowl so we can reuse it again. Or use it again, or reuse it. One of those things. All right, good. So we now have our implements back in business, and ain't it grand? All right, let's see what happens. Here's our roll. Drum roll, please, so to speak. Actually, there's a little bit of stuff out here. I'm gonna wipe down this counter a little bit because I'm finding a little bit of like a wet egg. Okay. So let's unroll this and see what happens. Worst comes to worst, we'll just have some scrambled eggs. Okay, interesting. So here's what we have. It is more or less held together, but it's still pretty wet. I could be that I had too much oil in that. I think I over-oiled the eggs. So the question now is, does it cut? Does it blend? Technically, yes. I'm not quite sure how big these should be. Does it show? Doesn't really show on this. I'm just gonna cut this into, pieces. Just slices. Yeah, this is too oily. Okay. So we definitely have something close to what I was looking for, but not quite there yet. All right, so cool. Let's try this again. Duly noted. So what we want now, I'm going to get this back up to heat. Add some oil. And what do they say for oil? 1 tablespoon vegetable oil. Yeah, I think I overdid that. I don't know. Tablespoon vegetable oil. Let's measure. I'm going to be a little stingy, actually. Yeah, that's definitely way less than I used before. All right, cool. So I was presumptuous when I said, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to throw some oil in because I know how much." I put in like way too much. All right, we'll grab some eggs. Second verse, same as the first. I'm just gonna put these in here for now. This is one of the keys to cooking, is to not get too worried if your first attempt fails, because it's really unusual to nail a recipe on your first try. All right, let me just clean up a little bit. Now we add back our sugar again. Shouldn't say we add back our sugar. We're adding our sugar now. 2 teaspoons, I think. Yeah, 2 teaspoons sugar, just a little bit. Let me check that pan. Move some of that oil around. Yeah, there's very little oil in that pan. That's going to be a key. There's my teaspoon. Got a little wet. I'm just gonna dry that out. Actually, okay. Problem is you don't want to get much moisture in a bag of sugar because it will cause it to clump. So there's 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, and then a quarter of a cup. Quarter of a teaspoon. Quarter teaspoon of salt. Quarter cup would make this very, very different. Be a mouthful of salt instead of a lovely egg dish. Alright. So that's that. Let's mix that up. as before, we're going to be nice and consistent. We're going to really mix this. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of browning on the remains of the egg from before. This pan's already probably pretty hot. Yeah. That pan was already, I mean, it had cooled off somewhat, but it was by no means cool. So it's heated back up pretty quickly. I think that's pretty close. Right. Anything else we add to this? Oh, the milk. That's right. Because we like fluffy eggs. How much? Again, 2 teaspoons of milk. Yep, 2 teaspoons of milk. I also, if this turned out to still not work very well, I would probably cut out the eggs. I'm sorry, cut out the milk. Cutting out the eggs would not work at all. But the milk is going to add a little bit of a little bit more liquidity, and I'm trying to avoid that in this case. Cool. I am kind of freaked out by how quickly that cooked, so I'm going to actually lower the temperature on that a little bit. All right, now we're mixing up the rest of this. Cool. There we go. All right, that's looking pretty even. I'm going to put that in the pan. Good. There's that sizzle. And as before, we're going to mix this around. Oh, I forgot to get my aluminum foil. Need that really quick. Before all this cooks. Okay. And I'm just trying to keep this. Just trying to stir this. And we do want chunks, which we're definitely getting. Looks good, smells good. Definitely don't want like 3 minutes on this. This would be, annihilated. That's what it seems. Because this is supposed to go in when it's still runny. These are not runny eggs, so down they go. This could be another thing. Maybe we need to move them onto the aluminum foil much faster because of the cooking time here. So we're going to do this and then just really try to smoosh those up as tightly as I possibly can. I'm going with something a little thicker this time. Ooh, that's really hot. Okay. So now what I'm going to try doing is basically twisting these ends to compress the egg. Okay. Alright. That is about as much as I can do without killing myself. So, there we go. 5 minutes, and we're going to see how this one turns out. I'm definitely feeling a little better about this one. These feel much more... Okay, I need to kind of scrape down the end of these chopsticks. But yeah, this definitely feels a lot more appropriate. The consistency feels right. No question the consistency is much firmer than it was before. So it shouldn't goop out all over the place like it did before, but now it might be a bit too much on the other side. I may need to cook these on low instead of medium. It could be that the medium in the cookbook, their range is actually not too powerful, or they're assuming a range top that is not too powerful, and mine's just hotter than what they assume. That happens. Different people have different things, and you have to go for what you think people have. Okay. Go. That's cleaned. This is the other nice thing. Again, I'm cleaning all this stuff, so now I'm so much is taken care of already. I don't really have to worry as much about where everything's going, because it's like, okay, this is already clean. I've already processed a lot of my stuff. I'll put these eggs back in the fridge. Should remember to buy more eggs. This is another important thing about cooking and baking in an experimental way, is to beware of making something, cooking or baking something, when you're under time pressure. Don't try out a new recipe when friends are coming over, and where you started an hour before they're supposed to arrive, because then if anything goes wrong, you're screwed. Whereas if you try something just to see what happens, you might just buy a carton of eggs and just make tamagoyaki, 4 times in an evening to kind of get it down. And then when you actually want to make it, you're now comfortable with it and you can just make it. Really important. And unfortunately, people just have this idea that food should not be wasted, so you can't experiment with food. And the key to this is recognizing you're not going to waste this food. I'm still going to eat this stuff. It just won't necessarily be in this format. So, for example, my sort of weird scrambled, oily eggs, I will probably end up putting that in a bowl and adding steaming some rice, and that'll just be, a breakfast that I make. So I'll put that in the fridge, make a couple servings of that, and I'll consume it over the course of time, right? You can still eat this stuff. I may eat some of this tonight. It's just a matter of kind of finding a spot for it, but you're not going to waste things. It's just going to be something that is not your initial anticipated dish. That's fine. Oops. Still have the burner on. Fixing that. All right, another about minute and a half on this this roll of egg. I can tell this is one of those things you need to make it a couple of times to really get a feel for the right consistency, the right temperature, the right runniness, the right shape. At least for me, it's something that there are enough little pieces to it where, because it's going in this opaque container, I'm going to have everything prepped correctly. It's going to sit in there until it's done. So I need to know what correct looks like. It's another important thing about cooking is that some recipes, you can make and you can observe it the entire time. Stir fry is a good example, where you're watching the wok, you're watching the food in there, so when it's burning, when things are going wrong. You can smell it, and you can smell when it's smelling right. But if you don't have that, you don't quite know what you're doing. In terms of your recipe involves something going into an oven for half an hour, which you kind of can't control. That is a much more difficult thing to learn, because you can't observe as you go. So different dishes require different things. All right, it's been about 5 minutes. Let's see what we're ending up with. Still very hot, so I'm just gonna unroll that. Got some wetness there, picked up along the way. Let's unroll this. What do we have? It's still very wet. Wow, that's interesting. Much better than before. Definitely holding together pretty firmly, but still pretty wet. So I could actually take that out even further. So when it says take them out when they're runny, they're wrong, I think. So I'm going to cut this in half and then in quarters. And it's cutting pretty easily. So I'm just going to show you, and that's too hot. So maybe I can hold this up to the camera. Oop! tore that. As you can see, this is, it's still pretty wet, still pretty runny, but it would hold together. Like if you put that in a bento box, you would actually have a whole thing. It might fall apart eventually. But clearly this needs to go in much more when it's almost firm, when it's almost ready to go, and then you put it in and fold it over and let it go. Or maybe you let it sit in that roll for another 5 minutes. I don't know. let it really solidify. Because the thing is, this is rolled up fairly tight, but it's wet. Like there's just no getting around. This is a wet egg. And I don't care how tight it is, it's still gonna flop out if the egg is wet. Like it's gonna cook somewhat, but this was in there as it was, so I think it might need some more time. I don't know, but that is all the time I have today for Otaku no Cooking. So we made a something close to tamagoyaki. Not quite there yet, but enough to where with some more experimentation, some more time, we can certainly get there and get what we want, which I think is basically just a little, a cylinder of egg. You would put. I've seen them in anime and such. To me, you put in a bento, it's just an extra egg thing. So good to know. It's possible, but obviously it takes some experimentation and some time to get the consistency right and all that stuff. So, FYI. All right, that will do it for us for tonight. Thank you all so much for joining me. That is all about Talking About Cooking and Workshop Wednesday. Until next time.